Augustus decreed that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was the governor of Syria, and everyone went to their town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them.
This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, thank you very much, Lee, for reading that so well. Did you notice in the true story which we've just heard in that reading that there were two kings in the world? Here's the world, and you may notice it resembles an orange, and what I'm going to be doing now is building a Christingle on the screen. There were two kings in the reading. One of them was called Caesar Augustus. And he was a sort of king. He ruled over much of the world, and he actually founded the Roman Empire. He took over more and more countries as far away from Rome as Spain and Egypt, until it seemed he was king over the four corners of the world. The world doesn't really have four corners. The Bible doesn't say it's flat or has corners. In fact, the Bible doesn't get anything wrong. But what Augustus Caesar didn't realize was that the world was made by God. And so is everything in it. All the good fruits of the earth are all God's good gifts to us. But Augustus Caesar took God's gifts and ignored the person who gave the gifts. That's always a shame, isn't it, when people don't say thank you. Augustus Caesar didn't say thank you to God because he thought he was God, really. He thought he was so great, and he wanted to show everyone how great he was. So to show off, he decided all the people in his Roman Empire had to be counted. And then he'd be able to say, look everybody, look how many people I rule over. And so, even though Augustus did some good in the world was a dark place. And that's what our world is like if we don't love God. We're all a bit like Augustus when we don't say thank you to God and live our lives for him. But then came the other king in the reading. Just at the time that Augustus was counting all his people, we've just heard about this king's birth. He came from a royal family, descended from the great king David. And was he born in the capital city, Rome? No. This king was born in a little corner of Augustus Caesar's empire, a little town called Bethlehem. Was this king born in a palace? No. In a hospital? No. He was born in an outhouse, a place where the animals were kept, not in a palace. There wasn't even any room in the hotel or the inn or a guest room. But when he was born, light came into the world. Do you know his name? His name is Jesus. And he's the king over the whole world because he came from God and he is actually the one who made the world. And so he is the light of the world. And that's why we have a candle in our Christingle. It reminds us of Jesus, the light of the world, the king. It's not what you'd expect for a king to be born in a stable. And this king didn't wear a crown, except that when he grew up, people hated him and put a crown of thorns on his head. When this king was born, they wrapped him in strips of cloth and laid him in a borrowed manger. And 30 years later, when this king died, they wrapped him in strips of cloth and laid him in a borrowed tomb. He is the King of love. He came and showed his love for the world by dying on a cross. And so the red ribbon on the Christingle represents the blood Jesus shed. He died so that we could be forgiven. And that's what this baby was born for. To rescue us from sin and death by dying and rising again. And so he is still alive today, and he's still king over the whole world. Now, hardly anyone remembers Augustus Caesar these days, but Jesus is still king. Some people still ignore Jesus, and that's sad. But if anyone decides to live with Jesus as our king, he lights a light in our hearts. We can know the light of the world lighting up our lives. His forever light. That's why Christmas is such good news. If we trust Jesus as our king, he gives us his light. Happy Christmas. Now, the Christingles are going to be handed round. So if I could ask the stewards and those who are helping hand out the Christingles to come up and get a tray of Christingles.